Today is episode 545, 5 ways to step back from burnout.
The 10-Minute Teacher Podcast with Vicki Davis. Every weekday, you'll learn powerful, practical ways to be a more remarkable teacher today.
Oh, teachers, we cannot burn out. And part of backing off from burnout, which is our topic for today, is understanding the signs and what we need to do. So Amber Harper from the Burned In Teacher today is going to talk about 5 ways to back up from burnout. So Amber, where do we start?
The first thing that I always recommend is stopping the shame, talking about it, acknowledging it, becoming vulnerable, and knowing that you're not a bad person because you're struggling with burnout. So step 1, definitely open up the conversation.
And who should that conversation be with? Yourself? Your family?
Well, yes, actually, I have definitely suggested to teachers before to say it out loud. I'm burned out. But that's not enough. You have to do step 2.
Or I am going to burn out if something doesn't change, which is hopefully Absolutely. By the end of your career, if you were going to make it, you're just going to have to back up and say and do it before, right?
Exactly. You know, there are definitely signs and symptoms, but what we do as teachers is we brush them off because we say these are just things that happen. This is just the way it is. And in fact, you know, burnout is called burnout because it's a slow burn. So acknowledging it, saying it to yourself, and then talking to someone, not venting, but talking to someone and seeking support and being honest with yourself about what you're struggling with definitely falls into that first step.
Okay. So are there some signs people need to be looking for?
Absolutely. Exhaustion. Short temper, not sleeping, which is ironic because you're exhausted, but you can't sleep. Feeling like you can't do this anymore, or you wonder how long you can survive this. Those thoughts, those feelings are real and they need to be acknowledged. So if that's happening, what you can do then is go to step 2, which is name your burnout.
Okay, what does that mean?
So Dan Siegel says, if you can name it, you can tame it. I took that quote from Lori Desautel's, and it is so perfect, not just for helping students to control their behavior and their thinking, but it's also helpful for teachers to be able to name their burnout. So what I did from lots of research about not just teacher burnout, but burnout in general, is that there are 3 types, and I call them burned and over it, burned and unbalanced, or burned and bored. And from those understandings and that research, I created a free teacher burnout quiz to help teachers to identify which type of burnout they are. And before you ask, yes, there can be a hybrid.
Okay, so I also want to take a pause here because, you know, we know that mental health is very important. There is burnout is real, but if somebody has depression, what do you want to say to them before we go on?
Again, going back to opening the conversation, you cannot take care of these things by yourself. You have to open the conversation. And if that is going to a doctor or a therapist, that is what you need to do. I know I have talked about very openly before that I should have gone to therapy several years ago, and I didn't because I thought that I was, number one, I thought I was a bad person. I thought I was being ungrateful for all that I had. And I sought support in the form of venting. And I thought that was the same thing as getting all the feelings out, when I wasn't actually being supported in the way that my brain and my body needed to be supported. So don't be ashamed. There's a stigma about anxiety and mental health and having a therapist, but I can tell you from experience that before I had gone to the doctor and talked about my anxiety, he put me on medication. And that was definitely not helpful for me. If I would have taken the time to acknowledge my feelings and open up and be very vulnerable again, like I said, and honest about how I was struggling with being where I was in my career, I would have saved myself a very public and embarrassing breakdown, which I have also been very public about as well.
And these things happen. And teachers, we just want to encourage you. If you think you're depressed, you want to get help. And let's just take away the stigma. I think enough of us have admitted struggles with this. Enough of us have said it's okay that you don't need our permission. It's just about, the students, they know more than you think they know.
Right. They do. And they're very good at reading their teachers, for sure.
And a teacher game face is a smile. You know, every student deserves to be taught by a smiling teacher. And yeah, you can't do it when you're depressed. I've been there. And it's just, maybe you can fake it, but it's not the real thing. Okay. So let's go to our third one then.
So when you take the teacher burnout quiz, it will give you your results as burned and unbalanced, burned and over it, or burned and bored. Once you get those results, then you need to know what to do with them, not just naming it, and actually it feels so good to say it out loud. I am burned and unbalanced. I'm not just burned out. I know specifically what my issue is. And I go straight to burned and unbalanced because that is the most popular outcome from the quiz, is that overworked, too much to do, not enough time, not having systems, not having maybe very good time management, that lack of work-life balance that everybody is seeking. So what you can do then is once you take the quiz, you can download my teacher burnout cheat sheet. What that is that explains how you might be feeling and then some specific action steps that you can start taking to actually address the things that are burning you out. Because I've said it many, many times, there are not enough bottles of wine. There are not enough runs, foot massages, acrylics that will help you, that'll self-care your way out of burnout. You have to be bold and you have to really address the things that are causing you to feel the feelings that you are feeling.
Absolutely. This is just on the money and what we need to talk about. Okay, what's next?
So the next step then is not just being able to name your burnout and have the action steps, but to actually be able to identify your stage. So there are stages of burnout. There is stage 0, which is totally burned out. And then it goes all the way to stage 5, which is burned in. So you can have these different feelings, different thoughts, different ways that you're behaving, and identify just how burned out you are. Because I compare it to a rubric. When you have a project or a writing assignment, you give typically kids rubrics so they see how they could seriously bomb the project or how they could get an A, right? I mean, I'm sure you've done this, Vicki, right? So if you can see on these stages of burnout, if you can see, okay, wow, I'm definitely at a stage 1. All right. I need to ignite my flame, right? So if I'm here, I know then what I need to be doing at a stage 4 or a stage 5 so that I can start to actually see the results of all of my efforts and be activated to create change.
Okay. So what's the difference between burned out and burned in?
All right. Great question. So someone who's burned out is typically feeling really frustrated. They're isolated. They're not talking about it. They are keeping everything inside and they're feeling ashamed and they're not really trying anything new. They have convinced themselves that this is just the life of a teacher and that being miserable is normal and that there is no change for them. This is just the way life is. A burned in teacher is someone who's activated, someone who is excited about the changes that are to come in their life. They are someone who has taken control over the things that they can, because Vicki, I'm sure you've heard this too. There are things that we can and cannot control. Yep. And teachers are self-proclaimed type A personalities, and they want to control everything and everything. They wear everything on their shoulders. What I definitely preach to teachers is that you have to control the things that you can. And there are a lot more things that you can control than you believe that you can about yourself, not about others. You can't manage others. You can't control others, but you can manage yourself. You can manage your systems. You can manage your relationships. You can manage your future. And so that's what a burned in teacher is in a very small package.
Yeah. And how do we finish up?
So that was stage 3, I believe. So stage 1 was talking to somebody and talking to yourself about it. Stage 2 was taking the burnout quiz. Stage 3 is identifying your stage. Step 4 would definitely be getting somebody who can help you to be accountable. Finding somebody that, again, at the beginning, maybe you started talking about it, but now you can begin to put a name to it and identify your stage and start working towards your goals. Have somebody there that can help you. And again, whether that's a therapist or your spouse or your best friend or your teacher bestie, have someone that you approach them and you say, look, I am burned and unbalanced. I'm really going to work on my time management skills. Number 1, do you have any suggestions for me? And number 2, can you check in on me, or can I count on you if I need some support, if I have questions that I can come to you and ask for that support?
And for me, when I burned out, in particular, my first time, and you and I were talking before we started recording about, I tend to be nice and say yes. And my husband made me do no practice. Mm-hmm. So I had a friend at school that I went to and said, okay, my problem is I'm saying yes too much. Mm-hmm. And I want you to be accountable to you that when I'm thinking about saying yes, you and I'll talk. And I need help saying no sometimes.
Yeah.
And it made all the difference in the world. And I stopped feeling, why do we feel guilty saying no? If we're not the best person for the job, we're doing them a favor.
Right. Well, I think one of the things is that we as teachers, again, we want to save the world. We want to save our students. We want to save our colleagues. We want to save our schools. We become very quickly a martyr of our time and our money and our careers eventually if we don't set those boundaries. So I think in an effort to help to activate that teacher self-empowerment, we have to believe, number one, and this is kind of counterintuitive, we have to believe that we cannot do all the things and that we shouldn't be expected to. So setting those boundaries, learning how to say no. And I've also said, you don't have to say no. You can say not right now. You can say, unfortunately, I can't commit to that at this time, but please come back to me in a few months and maybe I can help you now. Or help you then.
Absolutely. Not yet is a good answer for many things. Okay. How do we finish? How do we finish up now?
Okay. So step 5 then is actually the beginning of the burned in journey. So now that you have opened the conversation, you know what type of burnout you are, you know what stage you are, you have an accountability buddy. Now you can begin where you are. And that's B in burned in because it's an acronym. So B in burned in is all about really reflecting on how you got to this place. So how long have you been a teacher? How long have you worked in your corporation, your building, your classroom, your grade level? When did these feelings start? We back way up so that we know where to begin in addressing these struggles that teachers are having. And there are so many different reasons that you cannot begin to pinpoint the exact spot for all teachers, you know? So we do a lot of digging, a lot of reflecting, a lot of questioning to figure out where this started so that we can start to take action on those specific reasons why you're struggling with your burnout in the first place.
So educators, if you teach long enough, I really don't know a teacher who's been teaching longer than 10 or 15 years who hasn't had an experience with burnout. You could be out there, and if so, bless you. But most of us, myself included, I have had a good 3 times that I truly know that I experienced it. First was the worst because I lived in denial. You know, denial is not a river in Egypt. It's an attitude that we have to get past. It is okay to admit that you feel burned out. And these shows are going to be airing, you know, in August. And some of you will be listening to it at the beginning of the year. And, you know, you're trying to get your heart back and you don't feel like your heart is there and you don't feel like you're ready. And for me, when I experienced it, that was kind of where I was. You know, if I'm not excited in August, bless me, you know, there's something going on inside. So tell them how they can connect with you and how they can find these quizzes.
Sure. First of all, let me tell you that I think that the beginning of the year or even in the summer is the best place to learn about these names of burnout and the stages so that you can identify them before they become a terrible problem in your life. So I have had teachers that I've worked with that have said, I'm not burned out, but I really want to know what to look for so I can address it right now. So you can find me at burnedinteacher.com, and all over the homepage, you can begin to take action steps by taking the quiz. You can learn about free resources and how to work with me. I'm on social media at Burned In Teacher. DM me, email me at support@burnedinteacher if you have any questions at all.
Thank you, Amber.
Oh, thank you so much, Vicki. This was a pleasure.
Check the show notes for the resources mentioned in this episode at coolcatteacher.com/E545. So that's episode 545. All of the episodes are always on the blog. So check those out. And your challenge for today, of course, is to take the burnout test. Now, one other thing I wanted to mention is that you can now listen to this podcast on Spotify. Just go in your Spotify app and click on the podcast tab and search for the 10-Minute Teacher. And that's the numeral 1 and 0, 10-minute teacher, and add it to your podcast playlist. The show is also on Pandora. So if you like to listen on Pandora, you can now add podcasts on Pandora. And a lot of podcasts are not there, but mine is one of those that is there. And it's even on YouTube. So just about anywhere you go, just search for the 10-minute teacher and set up your pod catcher. Thanks for listening. And I always appreciate the tweets. Twitter is the one place that I pretty much check every day. So if you have comments on the show, just message me at Cool Cat Teacher. Give suggestions, give feedback and thoughts. I'm always checking in to see what you think.